Association. My name is Melissa Hodgins. I'm the Vice President of our Neighborhood Association. I'm losing my voice a little bit. Thank you, Vin, for the graphic. I appreciate that. He's my heckler. I just want to let everybody know that we have our membership renewals. If you'd like to join our Neighborhood Association, it's $18 for a family, $12 for a single, $10 for a senior. If you have any community concerns that you would like to submit through us, and we will follow up with the town, there's a box on the back table. If you want to put your concern in there, we'll take care of it. We have HNA t-shirts available on the back table also for $10 if you're interested. Our next HNA meeting will be Wednesday, which is different because it is usually Thursday, but it's Wednesday, June 17th at the gazebo at the Hilton Library. It is the HNA's 20th anniversary. The Maplewood Community Swingtown Band will be there, conducted by Ben Williams, to help us celebrate. In case of rain, it will be at the DeHart Community Center. Don't forget to vote in the primary election on Tuesday, June 2nd. And the gardens at Prospect Street parking lot by St. Joe's Church. We have been working on building up a garden there around the parking lot. If anybody wants to donate flowers, is interested in helping us garden, we would love to have you. If you have some time to water anything, just let me know. We have been doing it at different times throughout the week, whenever it works for us, so we'd love to have you come out and help. Our moderator is Carol Buchanan. And do you want to come
Timer.
Oh, I'm sorry. And our timer is Florence over here. She's going to let us know how much time we have for each. And
thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's nice to have a nice crowd. We'll start our candidates forum by, I'll go over the format. Each candidate has 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then when we start the questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. And these questions are questions that they have received ahead of time so that they can have a thoughtful answer. After that, we will have approximately 5 minutes for questions from the floor, and then 2 minutes for closing statements. Did I say 5 minutes?
Yeah, you did.
I saw there 15 minutes. I'm sorry. I looked at you. I knew I said something wrong. Okay, and we alternate on who we start with. So Nancy will start at that end, and the next time we'll start with Greg. The first question, well, first we have opening statements. So we'll start with Nancy.
Thank you, Carol. I don't know if everybody can hear me. Is everybody? Just yell if you can. My name is Nancy Adams, and I want to thank the Hilton Neighborhood Association, a fabulous organization I worked with a long time ago, for organizing this candidates forum. I've been in Maplewood since 1989, and I've immediately dove into volunteering in this fabulous town that I found to live in. I started with Tuscan School, actually, in my activism in town. They needed somebody to do a theatrical show for the year. So we basically brought Tuscan theater back alive after it had been dark for 30 years, producing and directing Really Rosie and starting a tradition that has continued to this day. They now do theater at Tuscan every year. But after that, since I was an at-home mom with little kids, I needed some intellectual stimulation, I guess you could say, and joined the League of Women Voters, where I learned a lot about evaluating issues on all sides and looking at every side of an issue nonpartisan basis and arguing topics of the world and of our country, and it was a great learning experience and really valuable to me. I then noticed Springfield Avenue, which is a block from my house, so I've basically activated my neighborhood went door to door, founded the College Hill Neighborhood Association, and then along with Carol and the rest of the Hilton Neighborhood Association, we founded the Springfield Avenue Partnership. So I'm here to extend my community service by asking you to support me for the Maplewood Township Committee. So I see my time's just about up. So thank you. Goes faster.
My name is Greg Lembrick. I would also like to thank the Hilton Neighborhood Association, Carol, and all of you who are here tonight. This election isn't just about a post office. There are many critical issues impacting our community at stake, and I look forward to addressing your questions and the opportunity to discuss those issues with you tonight. Before we start, though, I'd like to take the chance to briefly introduce myself. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I grew up in a household that really valued public service and local government. My mother was a full-time county and then later a state employee. She was a probation supervisor, but she still found the time to get involved in the schools. And throughout the time my sister and I were in school, she spent most of that time as president of the PTA as well. My father was a local public school teacher, and he also served on the township committee in my hometown, including a term as mayor. So I got a front row seat to local government and volunteerism. After graduating from Somerville High School, I went on to college and law school at Columbia and then worked for a couple of large firms in New York City. And for the past 13 years, I've been providing pro bono legal services for the Lakota tribes in South Dakota, helping some of our nation's poorest and most neglected citizens to have equal voting rights. I've recently taken a position as in-house counsel at New York Life Insurance Company, in part to give me more time to spend with my family and also to get involved in my community. It's something I've always wanted to do based on my parents' example, and I'm really hoping to follow that family tradition. My wife and I, Alex is here with our daughter Cece, who's 4. When we moved to Maplewood, I knew this was such a wonderful, vibrant community and that we'd never leave. I'm running for township committee so that my generation and young families like mine can have a direct voice in local government and help shape the future of Maplewood. Not just for the next budget year, but for the next generation.
Jerry?
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. My name is Jerry Bryan. I'm running for Maplewood Township Committee. I'd also like to thank Carol Buchanan and the Hilton Association for sponsoring this event, and to thank all of you for coming out this evening. The volunteers who make up the Hilton Neighborhood Association are an important part of the fabric of this community, and it's always nice to be here and have the usual warm welcome. I came across Maplewood by accident 30 years ago and fell in love with the place when I bought my first house. I raised, my 3 children were born here. My wife and I have 6 children between us, and my youngest child is about to go into Columbia High School, where I guess I'll get to volunteer to be a band parent as well. From almost the entire time that I've been in the community, I've been an active volunteer in my church, with the Maplewood Civic Association Citizens Budget Advisory Committee. I've been invited to be on various boards. I helped to start the Community Coalition on Race. I served on the Maplewood Planning Board, and I've been elected to the Maplewood Township Committee and served for a total of 19 years. In my time on the Township Committee, I'm very proud of the record that I've amassed. We've delivered responsible budgets and fiscal management. We took efforts to make sure that the historic character of our community was preserved. We grew our cultural affairs opportunities. We grew shared services with neighboring communities and continue to do so. I'm seeking re-election to be able to continue working on these wonderful projects and to continue to grow and enhance this great community that we all love so much. I appreciate your time and your attention, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, everybody. We'll start with the first question. We'll start with Greg. This has to do with development. There has been significant development in Maplewood recently. Some future plans include opening a Wawa on Jacoby and Springfield Avenue, and adding mixed-use buildings along Springfield Avenue. Do you think all this development is a plus or minus for the township, and is there a tipping point for too much development?
I do believe there is a tipping point for too much development. And if I'm elected to the Township Committee, one of the things you'll get is a commitment to responsible, sustainable development. We want to see locally owned, economically diverse development. One of the concerns I have about the developments that are going in are the impact that they could have on our schools. The elementary schools are already packed to capacity, if not over capacity. The infrastructure of our schools can't accommodate much larger enrollment. Our kids are already in classes that are too large, and we don't have the money or the space to accommodate additional students at this point, which makes it all the more troubling that for some of the developments that are coming in, especially the one at the PSE&G site, the Avalon Bay development with a 30-year pilot, we're going to see students coming into the district and those developers are not going to be paying taxes to the school district. So either the schools are going to have to do more with less, or the rest of the taxpayers in town are going to have to bridge that gap and make up for the tax breaks that we're giving to developers. So my proposals for development will be to have sustainable development and also economically responsible development that requires developers to contribute to the tax base without putting too much burden on our school system. One thing that I would like to see in terms of development would be a commitment to build age-restricted senior housing, to give the seniors who've built this community and raised their families here an affordable option so they can stay in town when they want to downsize if they can no longer afford to keep up their home.
Thank you. Jerry?
I think it's true that there's been some significant development in Maplewood recently, and I think for the most part that significant development has been to the good. There have been a lot of developments that have happened in the last several years that were on properties that were abandoned, that were brownfields, that were empty. The building next door was an abandoned chain property and was empty for several decades. So I think that replacing those ill-used properties, developing those brownfields, and developing empty buildings is all to the good. I do think that there is almost certainly a tipping point for development in the township, but development doesn't happen willy-nilly. It's part of a deliberate process that's planned out with a lot of public input. We have a master plan that's re-examined every 5 or 6 years. There are a lot of public meetings about it, and those plans, I believe, reflect the sense of the community, the character that the community wants to maintain, the distressed properties that the town has been successful in helping to market and develop. And I think that if you follow those deliberate plans and participate in the re-examining of them on a regular basis, I think we can all be confident that the development that happens in town or doesn't happen in town will reflect the desires of the entire community.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yes, hi. Maplewood is built up. It's about as built up as it can get. So when we talk about development, we're really talking about redevelopment. And redevelopment is different than just development. We're not in western New Jersey with a lot of farmland where we're doing new development. We're doing redevelopment. We're taking land and properties and abandoned properties and redeveloping them so that they are useful and taxable and good for the community. If the township has given ample opportunity and will continue to do so for input from the public with regard to the master plan, with regard to the re-examination. And as with every project, the scale, the style, and the use are major considerations that as a planning board member we take very seriously on the planning board. If I'm elected to the township committee, I would take equally as seriously. But to have, there are opportunities on Springfield Avenue, for example, where redevelopment is needed. The empty Wyman Ford used car lot needs to be redeveloped to not only help the avenue and help the surrounding businesses, but also to help our tax revenues. And so right now we're making so much less on sites like that because the improvements aren't there, so the township is not garnering the revenue that it should be garnering from those properties. So there's a tipping point. Yes, I'd say when Springfield Avenue is vibrant, vital, and filled up, and with businesses and housing that people in town want and people in town need, and in particular the College Hill and Hilton neighborhoods need Springfield Avenue to service them the way the village does service the whole town, and particularly that side of town. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, the second question deals with the former post office property. Inform us about your ideas for the former post office property in Maplewood Village. We'll start with Jerry.
Thanks, Carol. It's difficult to capture and encapsulate several decades of discussion and planning and community input in 2 minutes, but I'll try. The idea of getting the post office sorting operation out of downtown has been on the table in this town for decades. It's been in several iterations of master plans. It's been reviewed and discussed throughout the community. The current project, which is the idea of replacing the existing building with a mixed-use retail and residential building, is an idea that I support. I've been very active and involved in the 4-year process of public meetings and reviews and discussions about what the building should be. I'm excited by the notion of a smaller footprint building. I'm excited by the notion of connecting the 2 existing parking lots and opening up a better vista into the parks. I'm excited about bringing more people into our downtown. I think it'll help our business, and I think it'll help the vitality and the viability of the building and the village. It's important as a community that we make sure that the building is in keeping with the character of the community. It's the reason that we've been involved with so many public meetings over the last several years to try and figure out what the community wants. It's the reason that we've been changing the plan and modifying the plan and making the building smaller in response to public input. And I think that what has resulted is better than what was first discussed 4 years ago. I think the result of the Maplewood Village Alliance's Design Review Committee's approval of the building is a good indication that a broad range of people with talents in architecture believe that this will be good for the town. I look forward to the planning board review of this so that we can make sure that the building's site plan is in keeping with what the community wants and needs. But I think overall it's a good idea, and I do support it.
Thank you. Nancy?
Well, as an expert in downtown revitalization, a field I've been working in for over 20 years, I fully support an active mixed use on this site. The Maplewood Avenue at that end has struggled for years with marginal businesses at the end of Maplewood Avenue, with basically a stop at the post office, since the use of that site for all these decades has been probably half-time, maybe 50% of each day, and closed on Sundays and closed most of Saturdays, and evenings was dark. That led to the center of the village being where most people congregate and walk around and feel comfortable and safe. And it's led to marginal retail storefronts at the end of Maplewood Avenue. So I'm very much in favor of an active use on that site, and a mixed use I think is beneficial. The township, I think, would have been prudent to do an adaptive reuse study, feasibility study, prior to moving forward. But that said, I'm not sure I would support an adaptive reuse if it was going to be the same not very attractive building that stands there today. I'm happy that the Village Alliance Design Review Board, which is filled with local architects and people who have dedicated their time and energy and talent to the community for years, reviewed this and worked for months with the architect, and I'm anxious to see the full site plan on the planning board, and as I've been known to do on the planning board, speak up and in favor of in support of good design and demand that different designs be changed while I'm on the planning board, to make sure that they benefit Maplewood the best and fit and scale and size and use. As for the pilot, It's a standard use for a standard operating procedure with regard to redevelopment projects. This one is really tiny and smaller than any I've seen before, but I won't go into it anymore because my time is up. Thanks.
Thank you.
As most of you here know, I'm strongly opposed to the current proposal at the post office site, not only because I think the proposal is bad for Maplewood from every angle, economic, environmental, the character of our town, its impact on other local businesses, but because of the flawed process that's led us to here. And I think if you want evidence that the process has been flawed, look at the hundreds and hundreds of signs all over town and the surge of people who are coming out in opposition to this project. If public input had truly been sought along the way and had been incorporated, I don't think you'd see nearly the level of forceful objection from the community that we're seeing. Another flaw in this process has been that from the beginning, from day one, the Township Committee dictated that the current building be demolished, and no study was ever done to see whether the current structure, which is one of the more modern in the village, has great bones, good foundation, whether we could adapt and reuse that. And that's not the Maplewood way. This is a town that prides itself as an environmental leader, and we should have considered whether we could adapt and reuse at least part of that building before going ahead and saying it must come down. The flawed process continued when King's said they were no longer interested in moving across the street, and when the initial developer pulled out. That was an opportunity to take a step back, but instead the Township Committee said full speed ahead, said the building must come down and we must proceed with the design which had originally contemplated King's as the anchor tenant. The process, while it has gone on for a long time, has been flawed from the beginning, and I think those flaws are still becoming visible now, is at every public meeting, new problems with the design are popping up. I think we need to take a second look at this and really reconsider, and the first thing will be to look at adaptive reuse.
Thank you. We'll start with Nancy for the question about the Maplewood Memorial Library. The Library Board of Trustees is planning for the future by investigating the possibility of renovating and/or expanding the main library. What do you think is the responsibility of the municipal government in contributing to this effort? Are you committed to keeping the Hilton Library open? Let's start with Nancy.
Thank you, Carol. I reviewed the library's strategic plan for 2015 and 2016, and that includes their desire to strengthen the role of the library in Maplewood as a whole. It desires to enhance the customer experience with improved access, with the latest technology, and to upgrade what they offer now. It's also increase and diversify the sources of funding is desired, and to revitalize its existing buildings, to create inspiring spaces that take advantage of the park settings that both of our libraries are privy to. So I fully support making the libraries, bringing them into the 21st century and improving access for everyone involved. I would really oppose closing the Hilton neighborhood branch. The Hilton branch is essential for the densely populated area that I live in, the Hilton neighborhood sits in, and I think one of the ways to actually expand the use of that one would be to make sure that each library has its own unique services, not necessarily for separate parts of town, but that you have to travel from Wyoming Avenue to the Hilton Library in order to take advantage of Service A, and have to go to the main library on Baker Street to take care of Service B, for example. So there's opportunity to increase the utilization of both branches at the same time as trying to expand them. So it's important, though, to get for funding and for capital improvement projects that are desired by the library board. It's important to get the residential and the business community involved for not only fundraising but grants and involvement in the expansion plans. And it's, like I said, it's vital to keep those services at the Hilton branch open.
Thank you. Greg?
As the father of a 4-year-old who's just starting to discover the magic and wonder of reading, I can assure you that my commitment to the library in town is going to be strong. I think of it as 2 buildings, but one library and one community. And I think that there's so many volunteers in this town who give so much to give us a great library. I know that Carol has, I think you have the longest tenure on the library board, so in addition to her service here. And the town has actually done a great job of going above and beyond what they're legally required to do and making contributions. And I know Mayor DeLuca, who's here tonight, has really taken a leadership role with the library board and also making sure that the libraries are funded. I think Hilton Library should absolutely remain open. I think it's an important location. I think the new Sunday hours are a big improvement. And I think it plays a critical role, not just here for the Hilton and College Hill neighborhoods, but for our entire community. So yes, I think I would be committed to doing all that we can to keep both buildings open.
Thank you. Jerry?
I think all 3 of us are in violent agreement on this. I think anybody who talks about closing the Hilton Branch Library has clearly never been there. The Hilton Branch Library is busy all the time. It provides needed services to this neighborhood and needed services to the entire community. We would be insane to even think about closing it. I appreciate my opponent's remarks on the township's commitment to funding the library. It is the case that the township funds the library at almost double the rate that we are legally required to. I think that's good money. I think that's good investment in the community, and I think we should continue it. We have a very strong and dynamic library director, and our library is evolving and moving very quickly into this new century. The library is no longer a boring bunch of stacks of books. It's technology, it's community groups, it's classes, and I'm very happy at the quality of service and the level of service that's provided by our entire library system. I think it should continue. I think it should continue to be enhanced, and I think the Hilton Branch Library is a very, very important part of that. I'm completely committed to keeping it open.
Thank you. Next question has to do with shared services. With the possibility of a new discussion about merging fire departments, what priority do you place on keeping open Fire Station number 2 on Boyden Avenue?
Do I start this one? Do I start this one?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me start out by saying that I am committed, if elected, to exploring new opportunities for shared services, both with South Orange and other surrounding communities, so that we can do things more efficiently and provide some tax relief. I think it's very viable that we combine fire services with South Orange, and I think our communities can ultimately save millions of dollars a year by doing so. But I think it's crucial, and this will be a deal breaker for me, that we not sacrifice or compromise health and safety in order to do that. In the past, when this has been explored, the chiefs have agreed that response time would not change with a combined fire department, and I think we want to keep that true. And in order to keep response time the same, we would need to keep Fire Station number 2 open. I think we need to maintain and improve our ability to respond quickly to the variety of calls that come in. And Fire Station 2 is an important location. If it were closed, there's almost no way I could imagine that response time from other fire stations wouldn't take much longer if we didn't have Fire Station number 2. So even if we do combine fire departments, my commitment to the health and safety of our community and to keeping response time the same would mandate that Fire Station number 2 on Boyden Avenue remain open and staffed.
Thank you. Jeremy?
So I'm very pleased that there's an opportunity for a new discussion about merging fire departments with South Orange. I think it's a good idea. I've always thought it was a good idea. One of the things that I like to say to people about providing municipal services and changing things is that we've done the easy things already. The easy things that we can all agree on, and then we can just immediately see how they work, are done. Merging the fire departments is a little complicated. There's different level of service. There's different level of service that's provided by the different fire departments. There's different civil service and non-civil service structures, but I think that those are surmountable problems. I think that when we do an agreement to merge our fire departments, if it comes to that, we need to make sure that we have an agreement on not just response time, but on service level, and that we measure those service levels and make sure that our merged fire department continues to provide them. Critical to the level of service that is provided to this community is our fire station number 2. This is a very densely populated part of the community. I think anybody who would advocate for the closing of Fire Station 2 would be buying a disaster for the community. I think a merged fire department without that fire station being open would be a terrible idea, and I wouldn't support it. But I do look forward to a discussion about the kinds of services that the 2 fire departments can provide together for all the citizens of Maplewood and South Orange.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah, I think shared services part of this question is almost kind of lost in focusing only on the fire departments. We already do mutual aid, of course, with all area, neighboring towns. If we are going to, we do have new administration, new village president in South Orange, so conversations could, of course, be talked about more. Firehouse number 2 is essential to be open for the reasons that Jerry stated, with the dense population and the industrial areas on this side of town. So, but there are other opportunities when we talk about shared services that would potentially help us with our tax issues and the difficulty in raising revenue. So to save costs and save some money a little bit, we should be looking at other shared services as well that might even be simpler, such as the recreation department. We already share a school district with South Orange. It would be a natural step to then merge the recreation departments and try to get costs down on that and more effective and better service. I think South Orange currently does a better job in that regard with recreation, and I'd like to talk with them more about it. First aid, we need some help with our first aid and first responder part of our services that is linked to the fire department. We need to look into what we can do to expand those services, improve those services, and perhaps merge some of those services as well. Purchasing is another area I'd like to look into to save money with not only our sister town of South Orange, but also Irvington and Springfield, Milburn, everyone that is immediately surrounding us, and or perhaps the towns of Essex County getting together to do some bulk purchasing to find ways to save money for the town, each town, by purchasing together.
Thank you. And for the last question, this one has to do with the Humane Society. Are you in favor of continuing the contract with the Newark Associated Humane Society for our animal control services? And we'll start with Jerry.
I have 2 minutes for a one-word answer. I'll take more than just one. No, I'm not. I voted against the contract when it came up before the Township Committee because I wasn't satisfied that the contract contained both the appropriate levels of service that our citizens needed, and appropriate ways of measuring the quality of that service. And the only thing to be happy about with the contract, I think, is that we're going to be able to get out of it just as soon as we can get our partners in South Orange to put together a proposal for shared animal control and animal shelter services. I think that we should all think about the Newark Associated Humane Society contract in the way that I think about it, which is a temporary, not terribly satisfactory stopgap measure until we can have a local shared service with our neighbors and until we can find somebody to help us run animal shelter services in the existing shelter building that South Orange and Maplewood worked together to build so many years ago.
Thank you. Nancy?
1 minute. Oh.
I'm in favor of not continuing the contract with the kill shelter in Newark as well. we do have an issue with animal control, and we need to address it as soon as possible. I think once the legal issues of ownership and all the legalities that are going on right now that are still not straightened out with regards to the Jersey Animal Coalition and the building that was built by the Public Works Department in South Orange, once those are straightened out, I think we should start the talks sooner than later with South Orange. They already have an animal control officer, I understand a good one, and I think we should talk about trying to share that employee in some way and start talking about how we could merge our animal control work so that we can use that existing building and further our service to the community in this regard, and be closer and on site for animal emergencies like that squirrel that's up in your attic and things like that. So. Yeah.
Thank you.
So at the risk of agreeing with my opponents twice in the same debate, I agree with my opponents for the second time tonight. I think that the contract with Newark AHS may have been a necessary evil for the short term, but I think we really need to prioritize working with South Orange so that we can do animal control and animal services and shelter for animals locally here to give us more control over it. A number of really impassioned community members, as I've learned about this issue in the last few weeks of the campaign, have expressed really serious concerns about Newark AHS, their policies towards euthanizing animals, the level of service that the animals get. So I think we should do this as soon as possible. And my understanding is the contract runs out at the end of the year, and I hope that we're in a position so that we don't have to renew it for even one day.
Thank you. Okay, now is the time for questions and answers. Please make sure that you ask a question and don't make a speech, but we do hope that you will. You can direct your question to anyone, and anyone else who would like to respond is welcome. So, yes.
Should I identify myself?
Yes, would you please?
Want me to stand too?
Sure.
Okay. My name is Ed Bolden. I live at One Ball Place in Maplewood. Greg, I have several questions for you, but I'm going to limit it to only two. You indicated that you were not in favor of the pilot program, which is also a tax abatement program, which is used all over the country. And in this program, payments are made in lieu of taxes to the town. Are you saying that you have a problem with the payments, number one, payments that are made to the town in this tax abatement program? And also, I'd like to know, what is your vision for the readaptive use of the post office, since it is full of asbestos and PCBs, and they would have to be removed before any other additional new use could be used?
Okay. Well, first, to address your pilot question, and maybe just to provide some information, the payment in lieu of taxes is just that. It's a payment in lieu of taxes. So the town receives a payment, but it's substantially less than what the town would receive were the town receiving taxes. Furthermore, the payment that the town receives, because it's in lieu of taxes and not actually taxes, does not need to be shared with the school district. So the school district does not see the benefit from that taxpayer. And these are the bases for my opposition. I don't think, despite what you said about this being a common practice, I don't think this needs to be a common practice in Maplewood. I don't think it needs to be a common practice on prime real estate right in the center of our village. And I certainly don't think that we should be giving tax breaks to developers and then either the schools have to do more with less or the rest of us basically get soaked and have to pay additional taxes because we gave a tax break to a developer. To address your second question about what I would like to see there, I would like to see adaptive reuse at least explored. The current structure, we've been told by engineers, can support a second floor. While I'm not an environmental expert on asbestos removal, my understanding is that the costs of doing that are of whatever we would have to do to adapt and reuse the building is no greater than the cost the town is going to spend to demolish the building and do the environmental cleanup anyway. So I'm not sure you're talking apples and apples there. And the part of the problem here is that we've never had a chance to find out what ideas developers in the community would have for a repurposed building, because from day one, the Township Committee said that it had to be demolished and there had to be a mixed-use building there. So all of the proposals that came in fit the RFP. And if we take a second look, I think we can get some great ideas and give the community some options.
Thank you. Does anyone, Jerry, want to?
My opponent just said that the township gets less money from a pilot than it would get if the property was on the tax rolls. My opponent is wrong, factually wrong about that. Factually wrong. When a property is on the property tax rolls, the township gets a small percentage of the property tax revenue, 22, 23%. The pilot payment that goes to the township is higher than that. And this isn't a secret. These, the details of pilot agreements are all in writing. They're all public documents. They're all on the town's website. These are discussed at our meetings. My opponent's incorrect. Excuse me. And you can just look at the numbers and see that. There are pilots that were granted in this community that helped to make defunct brownfield properties into viable apartment developments. I don't think that the apartments next door would have happened without a temporary, well, not temporary, without a tax abatement to help get that building built. So I think in the places where pilots were granted, like the PSE&G site and like next door, long-term pilots were good. They were good to get non-performing properties or troubled properties active and built up and developed, and I think that that was a good thing. I think that's all I want to say.
Did you want to add anything there?
I'll let them battle this one out for a minute.
Jerry, I really think what you just said is very misleading. Like, yes, the town may receive slightly more money from the pilot than it would on the tax rolls, but the town receives only a fraction of every tax dollar to begin with. The schools receive nearly 60 cents, something like 58 cents in Maplewood on every tax dollar. The developer is not paying that. So the fact that the town is taking a little bit more at the expense of the schools getting nothing is the end result. And that's, and if the developers were paying more money under a pilot, they wouldn't ask for a pilot.
Okay. You can't say in one sentence that the town's getting less, and then in the next sentence say that the town's getting a little bit more. No, I beg your pardon.
The numbers are part of the town.
The numbers tell the story, and it is also a myth to say that granting a pilot takes 1 nickel from the schools. It's just not true.
Let's go on for one more question, please. Yes.
My name's Erin Scherzer. I'm the head of the College Hill Neighborhood Association. I have a question. Let's change the debate on the post office here and shift off to Springfield Avenue, which is in all of our backyards. There's a measure coming before the Township Committee next month, and I'm not sure if many individuals in the room are aware of this. As we know, Wawa is looking to move to right across from the PSE&G site, and as part of their application, as we know, they want a gas station. And as a town, we have a zoning ordinance prohibiting 24-hour gas stations. The business has made a request to the township to change said ordinance instead of using the process through the zoning Board of Zoning Adjustment. To our 3 individuals, and thank you for your willingness to step up to bat and try to serve our community. How would you, if you were on the Township Committee June 3rd, when this may come before, how would you address this issue? What are your thoughts on 24-hour businesses here in Maplewood? And how would you work with this business while respecting the needs of our community to have safe and prosperous area?
Okay, I will start with Nancy. Nancy, it's your turn.
My turn. Thanks, Erin. I've made my opinion on this issue known on the planning board, and have asked in the past the Township Committee to look into limiting hours of operation for our businesses to less than 24 hours. I worry about the effect on neighborhoods that, especially those around Springfield Avenue, that are so close to the business district, to the commercial district. I worry about the effect of 24-hour businesses. I think the crime statistics from the police department also show that a lot of their calls are because of these 24-hour businesses. I don't think, I've asked this to be looked at. It's something that if I get elected, I will look into as well. Other towns, including South Orange next door, do not allow 24-hour businesses. We don't allow parking on the streets, on residential streets overnight for safety reasons so that the police can easily see when there's something amiss. 24-hour businesses make it more difficult to have that happen. I'm not in favor of allowing Wawa to operate their gas pumps that late, to have vehicles going in and out and disturbing the neighbors around there so that they can get gas just for this. They're already coming here. I don't know if it's necessary to then give this up to them. They've already spent a lot of money developing the site. I don't know the details of the negotiations of whether or not this is a do or die situation for them, but I gotta believe there's a way to save Maplewood from that. And I would move that, other than the grandfathered businesses, I'd like to eliminate 24-hour businesses in town.
Greg, did you want to add something?
I'll just add a little bit. I think Nancy did a good job of laying out the concerns that all of us in the community have about 24-hour business, particularly a 24-hour gas station, which we currently don't have, and as Erin noted, is prohibited by ordinance. My understanding is actually from what the mayor said the other night at the meeting that and Mr. Desiderio, that this may be a deal breaker for Wawa. I know, but that this may be a deal breaker, and I think we'd have to consider with lots of community input. So I think the meeting may actually be June 16th, where the ordinance is going to come up, and there'll be at least 2 hearings on this before the Township Committee. And I would encourage all of you in the community that have a strong feeling on this to come out, because one thing I heard from everyone in the Township Committee and that I agree with is, they want to see how the community feels. There's benefits, but there's also a lot of concerns, and I think we have to really see how the community feels, and ultimately, if what Wawa wants to do is not in the best interest of the community, and that's a deal breaker for them, then the deal is broken.
Jerry?
I think we had this discussion at our last Township Committee meeting, and I agreed with the notion of going forward with drafting an ordinance so that we could have a frank and open public discussion and get public input. I don't have a predetermined yes or no answer to this. I want to think about it a little bit. I want to read what ends up getting drafted, and I want to hear from people what people think. I think that there may be places where 24-hour operation would be acceptable, but I'd like to see what might be proposed. I'd like to see what's drafted, and I'd like to hear from people. But I think if it turns out that it doesn't work for the community, then it doesn't work for Maplewood, and we shouldn't do it. But I think we've got some good discussion as a community to help us make up our minds about that.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Get it.
Wow.
Seriously?
Okay, yes.
Michelle Barbara. My question is, I know several seniors who have had to move out of town because they cannot afford to stay here anymore. What are your solutions for keeping not only our seniors but also our workforce population to make Maplewood affordable for them?
Okay, I think we'll start with Greg.
Yes, and this is something that all of us also had the opportunity to address last Saturday at the Senior Forum. And one thing that I've been saying consistently that I want to see is if we're going to look at the development of high-density apartment housing in Maplewood, we should really prioritize age-restricted housing for seniors. I've heard from many people in our community who've had to move out or are considering the unfortunate possibility of having to leave the community they love, that they've helped build, where they've raised their families, because they can no longer afford to stay in their home because of the taxes. And that hurts all of Maplewood. That doesn't just hurt our seniors. We need generational diversity. having elders in our community is crucial. It's something that really has hit home to me as I've gotten to learn the Lakota culture and where they value their elders and the environment above all, and that's become a part of my worldview. So I think we should do all that we can to promote development of age-restricted senior housing, and that's actually a project for which I would support a pilot, because it wouldn't be producing any new school children, and it would help to keep taxpayers here in Maplewood and maintain our generational diversity.
Thank you. Jerry?
I think this is probably another topic that we're all in violent agreement on. I think we had a long, open discussion about this at the Senior Forum last weekend, and I think we all recognize that the ridiculous overdependence on property taxes to fund government services puts us in this terrible situation where folks who are on fixed incomes, folks who are retired, don't have the salary growth or the ability to continue to pay. And I think we have to think about creative solutions, not just for age-restricted housing, although I think that's a good idea, but for partnerships with other organizations to try and help seniors find a way to stay. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
One more question?
Oh, wait, I don't get
Oh,
to
I'm
answer
sorry.
that. Normally I'd be like, cool, I didn't have to answer that, but I'd rather answer it. I do want to, and like my fellow men up here said, we had a lot of discussion about senior services, senior needs in our community, and of course cost of living and cost of property taxes and everything was a big part of it. We need to work with our state representatives and try to push for the ability to be able to give breaks to our seniors in order to stay in their homes through the property tax breaks that other states like Connecticut apparently allow their different municipalities to offer to their seniors. There's also, I know that the new village president in South Orange was very active in senior, even doing the prom and things like that, so this is obviously near and dear to her heart, and I'd like to work with her and with other organizations, Boy Scouts and things, to try to help seniors by, and our school students, to help seniors through former group that my daughter was in at Columbia High School with students serving seniors. So if we can get some help for the seniors that would be no cost to them, whether it's helping them maintain their homes, mow their lawns, take care of their snow removal, things like that, so that they can stay there longer and save money on things that they would normally have to pay to have done for them. So I think there's opportunities there, but it takes a lot of collaboration between towns and between groups within the town.
None of us mentioned Senior Uber.
Senior Uber,
Senior
and I made
Uber,
that
right,
up the other
Senior
day.
Uber, yeah.
Senior
Super.
Uber.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Any other question? Yes.
Hi, Corey Wolf. Live in the Hilton section on Revere. I had a question in two parts. One is directed to Mr. Ryan. Can you please elaborate on how your views of municipal development differ from Mr. Lembrick's? Okay. And then secondly, can you both explain a little bit more specifically about how the post office redevelopment, I know one said that it's beneficial for the town as far as not taking away anything from the schools, and then Mr. Lembrick, you have a different view. I felt like that was kind of cut off. I'd like to kind of have that play out a little bit more to
You want them to go at it again.
Okay. Anyone want to start, because I lost track.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Well,
I have a feeling we're both going to be talking for a while.
yes.
So I
We'll
wouldn't.
give you 2 minutes.
I wouldn't
Okay,
presume.
okay.
I wouldn't presume to speak about Mr. Lembrick's opinions. I'm not really clear on what they are. I know that he's against certain developments and in favor of others. He's against some pilots, but not others. I'll tell you what my opinion is. Where there are underperforming properties or underperforming pieces of land, if there's a way for the town to try and facilitate an improvement, I think the town has a responsibility to do that, and I think we've done that. I know that there's been a lot of talk about concerns that added apartments are going to add children to the schools, whether they're piloted or not. And despite rhetoric to the contrary, we don't have any indication that that's true. I said this at the senior forum. Everybody who does development in this part of the world and builds apartments relies upon some studies from Rutgers University that talks about how many children come from apartment buildings and go to schools. And I've said to school board members, these are the numbers we're all relying on, so if you have any evidence that those numbers are wrong, you need to tell us. And there's no evidence that those numbers are wrong. So I'm not concerned that apartment development is going to add children to the schools, because it hasn't. On the subject of pilots, a pilot has nothing to do with what the school's budget is, and it has nothing to do with how much money the township collects for the schools. The presence or absence of a pilot does not change what the school's budget is, and it doesn't change how much tax dollars they get from both towns. So I understand that folks might be opposed to pilots for other reasons, but respectfully, I think that thinking that the schools are being deprived of money, I think just isn't one of them.
Thank you. Yeah. Greg?
And where I think that is misleading at best is that by not bringing in full tax payments from these developers when we give out the pilots, they pay into the town, but I consider the schools part of the town. I realize Mr. Ryan wants to separate out the town budget versus the school budget, but that's a huge potential contributor to the school budget that we're not getting. That's extra money the schools could be using. So yes, in the strictest sense, it's not impacting the school budget, but it's depriving the schools of a substantial additional source of revenue that it could use for capital programs, to hire additional staff, and to just do things that are in the best interest of our kids that it can't do because it only has a limited amount it can work with. And as I talk to members of the Board of Education, as I talk to teachers, as I talk to administrators, they don't put nearly as much faith in the Rutgers study. The Rutgers study looked at a very large area. Most of the communities that the Rutgers study looked at aren't like Maplewood. They're not communities that are this desirable. They're not a school district that's this prestigious. I do think that particularly in the PSC&G Avalon Bay site, we're going to see a large number of families who are striving to give their kids a better education, who are going to be moving into those apartments. And it's not that I don't want them to get a better education, but our schools right now just can't handle that additional enrollment, particularly at the elementary school level, and we certainly can't do it if we're not going to be collecting tax dollars for it.
Carol, can I weigh in?
Did you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in. I don't want to just sit here and not talk. It's not like me either. So, I do just want to say, while I'm in my work, I've worked on several redevelopment projects in different towns. Pilots are, in fact, standard operating procedures, I said before, with redevelopment projects. I think, though, that they're almost becoming a little bit too desired or too dependent upon by, and let's just say this, I think that they've been used so much all over the country that developers now use them as a bargaining tool in large part. And I think it's important for our redevelopment agency, aka the Township Committee, to take a step back in those negotiations and not necessarily grant them quite as easily as the development community has been accustomed to getting them. That said, I don't necessarily disagree with them I definitely, don't disagree with the use of pilots. I think they're a valuable tool, especially in getting developers to develop on different sites that are, tight, difficult sites to develop on that a developer might say, forget it, we'll just go out into where we have open land and do something much more simple. But I also think a part of the negotiation could very well be to ask in future negotiations for a set-aside amount for the schools, a lump sum payment just as they do for infrastructure improvements. I think that's an opportunity that maybe hasn't been explored because traditionally pilots basically have nothing to do with the schools, but I think it's worth exploring. There's nothing to say you can't do that. So why not in this? You use a pilot, they get abated taxes for a certain amount of time, but also with the infrastructure improvements that you have to do at this intersection, if you're going to build here, you also need to pay the school district X number of dollars in a lump sum payment. That's just something that I think should be explored.
Okay. Jerry has indicated he wants to
Just one small point I'd like to add, if I may. You know, my background and training is as an engineer, and so, you know, we're very analytical and numbers driven. So I understand that people might not, if I could quote my opponent, might not have faith in the Rutgers study. But the nice thing about a numerical analytical study is the numbers are the numbers. You know, if the study is wrong, the numbers should show that the study's wrong. And I think that hasn't really been the case. And you know, if we find out that that's the case and the data tell us, the facts on the ground tell us that the study's wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. Because it's not about faith, it's about analysis of numbers.
Thank you. Okay, I think it's time for our closing statements.
No more questions?
I think we, do you have them?
I have a question.
Oh, there's one back.
Okay, there's two short questions.
Okay, very short question on parks maintenance. Ever since the town laid off a significant number of DPW employees and outsourced much of the park's maintenance to a private concern, the condition of our parks has been deteriorating. I think everybody would agree with that. What do you see as a possible way of bringing back the parks, given our current fiscal situation?
Okay.
Whose turn is it?
Let's see. And according to this, I think it's
I think
Just is somebody ready to answer?
I'm ready to provide an answer.
Go for it.
Sure. One of the things that I've just recently become involved in is a joint effort between Maplewood and South Orange and the school district to talk about this very question, to talk about the way field maintenance is done, and more important, to talk about the way field maintenance is funded. There are some interesting things that are done funding field maintenance in towns like Summit that are really worth looking at. And so I kind of wish you'd asked me this question in 6 months when we gathered a little more data and had a little bit more to say about it. But there are, I believe that there are opportunities to be a little bit more creative. And I really also do believe that this is a particular instance where we want to think about the facilities in Maplewood as being shared with South Orange, or the facilities in South Orange being shared with Maplewood, and the school facilities being shared by everyone. So I do think there ought to be a single unified approach, and so I'm very happy that this effort has at least begun to try and gather some information and get some new ideas.
Jerry, my question is broader than that. If you take a look at the bridge that's over by Baker Street, you find that the cement potholes are grown to the point where...
Okay, let's continue with that question.
Yeah.
Let's start. Nancy, do you have anything to add? And then we'll come
Well, I
back.
agree that there's been, through attrition, the Public Works Department hasn't been able to maintain things as well as they should. I'm not a big fan of outsourcing. I've seen it not work in other communities. I think there's no skin in the game by the outside companies that come in and mow lawns or take care of things. So I really want to look at how we could make it work better, whether it's hiring a couple of more DPW workers and releasing the outsourcing contracts and seeing how that can work better. I don't know the specifics of the DPW budget at this point, obviously, and so, but it's a concern to me, as is tree replenishment, which is one of my big issues in town, not just in the parks, but on every street that I walk on every day in Maplewood. The empty tree pits bother me enormously, and they're bad for our environment, the lack of replenishment. I understand we had Superstorm Sandy, we had microburst, but the replenishment has deteriorated greatly, and I'd like to see some sort of programs to help fund that, whether it's grants, and look for opportunities to start funding tree replenishment and stepping that up, because I think that's been to me even worse than park maintenance.
Okay, Greg, do you want to add anything?
Just briefly, Joan, I thank you for bringing this up, because as I've mentioned, as the father of a 4-year-old who just loves our parks, keeping them as gems in our community is really important to me, and I've seen it week in and week out, that maintenance just isn't where it should be, and I think in local government there's always a bit of trial and error, and we can't do all the things that we would want to do with the budget that we have, but I think that all of us can probably agree that it is a problem, and that that I think all of us, and certainly I can speak for myself, if elected, I'm certainly going to explore what we can do, whether it's bringing back some additional DPW workers, looking at some of the contracts we have, looking at shared services with not just South Orange, maybe Milburn and other surrounding communities as well, to share some of that maintenance and share some of the cost. And it's probably not a problem that we can fix overnight, but I think it's definitely a problem that we need to explore solutions for and make a priority.
Thank you. And there was one gentleman, and this is the last question.
Hi, John Reed, St. James Gate. In speaking with other business owners in town in regards to the redevelopment or construction of the post office building, is there a best answer to ensure that from little shops to bigger shops in town who pay a lot of rent with not a lot of parking, are we going to have access to be okay, to pay our bills, to have traffic still coming through town, and a place, maybe an alternative place to park? A lot of people are scared when that comes about, and I'd be interested to see who has the best answer in regards to that.
Yeah, I think
it's Nancy's turn.
Yeah. Thanks, John, for your question. This is what I do. This is what I've done for 20 years. This is what I know. And when I was managing downtown Red Bank, the economic depression hit, and I'd say about a third of my time was spent on the phone with business owners who were in desperate need of therapy and solutions. Well, it was scary. Even the hedge fund guys, even the rich people down in Rumson, nobody was spending any money, and the businesses were affected. I've also been involved in South Orange and in West Orange and different communities as well with regard to public improvement projects and how to get those businesses, keep those businesses functioning, keep their customers coming. And it takes a lot of planning, oversight, communication, and actually intuitive action. And there needs to be, I remember meeting with the construction manager on Sloan Street in South Orange in 97, 98 or whatever it was, and literally saying you need a board on that ditch so that people can get into that business, and so it takes a lot of action, and that's what's going to be necessary here. That's going to be, and as long as you know it, it can be made easier. Signage, communication to the public, clear indication of where they can park, what the traffic routes are, everything that goes into it, and making sure that the businesses are heard and that they're listened to, and when they have problems and they're not getting access to their own business, they need to let the Julie Doran and the Maplewood Village Alliance know, they need to let the town know, and that can all happen. It's scary, but you can make it through that. I've gone through major public improvement projects, and really what it takes is just being on the ball with all that stuff. So, yeah, you're speaking my language now.
Okay. Greg?
Okay. First, let me just say I love your fish and chips, so I will personally do whatever I can to keep you in business. Second, I share your concern, and I've heard it echoed by a lot of people who live in the village and who have businesses in the village. And I think it's part of the reason why so many business owners in the village have become active and really engaged on this issue. Parking in the village is a challenge, particularly on weekends and during busier times of day. And there are people who I think might otherwise come to the village who are dissuaded because of the parking challenges. The new building that's going to come in is going to bring residents, and the resident parking is going to be underground. But we're going to be adding additional retail space. 5 additional retail stores is the current plan, while adding only a handful of additional street level parking spots. And I don't think that's sufficient. I don't think it's going to help alleviate the parking challenge. I think it's only going to make them worse. And we also need to keep in mind that the parking spots that were vacated by the post office over by the loading dock, I've sort of now come to take them for granted. Those are also going to be going away. So in fact, the new plan that I've looked at is actually going to have fewer parking spots on the street than we have today. And that's just one of the many reasons why I think we need to take a step back. We need to take a second look at what we're going to do on that site, and we need to make sure we get it right, because whatever we do there is going to be there for the next 50 or 100 years, and we need to take into account the views of all the stakeholders, particularly the existing local businesses. I think our loyalty should be to them above an out-of-town developer.
Thank you.
So, John, let me be responsive to your question about how it's actually going to work if the site plan is approved and the project goes forward. And I think there's a couple things to say about that. This is a critical conversation that has to happen. It has to happen when we review the site plan before the planning board. It has to happen with the Maplewood Village Alliance. It has to happen with the business owners, and it has to happen continuously. We can't afford to put some kind of a construction plan in place and then find out a week into it that something isn't working. So what I would suggest we do is very early on in the process, we form a steering committee made up of local businesses that works closely with the developer, that has a very clearly articulated plan with very detailed milestones about what's going to happen when, and that we monitor compliance with that plan and change it immediately. Because I'm with you. I don't want the new development, which I think is going to be good for the town, to have any negative impact on your business and the other businesses in the village while it's going on. And I think it's something that has to be top of mind when we move forward.
Okay, it's getting late, and we will have our brief closing statements. And according to my graph, Nancy.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks again, everybody, for coming out. I love Maplewood. I love this town. I've loved it ever since I moved here. I get all verklempt when I talk about it. But the neighborhoods, the infinitely interesting and diverse housing stock, the cute little downtown placed right in the middle where we can all walk to, the diverse business districts that are walkable for me and usable by everyone. The walkability is a huge part of this town, and it's something I take advantage of all the time. The access to New York City is obvious. So people who enjoy diversity like I do and don't want to be surrounded by people who are exactly like we are, I find that so boring, and I don't like being bored. So, but they're the fabric of our community, and it's why I raised my kids here. It's why I'm raising my stepkids here. It's why I moved here. And while I've enjoyed community involvement to the extent that I've been involved for so long, I really feel like I can bring a lot to the township committee that it may be lacking, or just that I want to be more involved in the upcoming redevelopment of empty sites that we've talked about. I want to be more involved at the table where the decisions are made, and I want to bring my often unfiltered voice to the township committee. And without mincing words, I just think I'd be an asset to the township committee. I think, and to not be shy about saying that the diversity I love in town also needs to be represented on the township committee, and there's only 5 people you can represent that with. So a woman is stepping down. Thank you, Kathy Leventhal, for all your hard work all these years. So I think it's an open opportunity for another woman, and in case you haven't noticed, I'm the only one up here who's a woman. So
vote for me, please. I urge you to, and I ask you to, and I would love your support on Election Day, and thank you very much for everything. Thanks.
I'd also again like to thank Carol and the Hilton Neighborhood Association and all of you for coming out and giving us this opportunity to speak with you. This is democracy in action. I accept that I'm the new guy in this election. In fact, I embrace it. And I've really enjoyed getting the chance to go out and to meet people throughout the community and hear your views, hear your concerns, hear your ideas. So, and at the end of this process, I'm asking for one of your 2 votes on June 2nd. And if you do that, I want you to know what you're getting. You're going to get responsible, sustainable development without giveaways and tax breaks for developers. You're going to get increased communication and coordination with the Board of Education for the benefit of our schools, our kids, and the teachers who teach them. And I believe that our schools are a part of our town. I don't separate the two. We're going to get increased shared services with South Orange and other surrounding communities to provide tax relief. We're going to get a renewed commitment to environmental leadership. We're not just going to rest on our laurels or our reputation as being a green town. And you're going to get greater transparency and communication from local government. And there's going to be an increased emphasis on soliciting and responding to public feedback. Tonight you got a chance to hear from all 3 of us so that you can make an informed choice. But only 2 of us can be elected. And I'm asking you not just for your vote, but more importantly for your trust to let me serve you. I hope this campaign is the beginning of my conversation with this community. The communication is going to continue to go both ways, and I promise that I'll be a strong advocate for your interests. Over the next 3 years and beyond, we'll work together toward a better Maplewood for this generation and the next. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry?
Thank you all very much for coming out this evening and for taking the time out of our busy schedules to listen to the candidates for office. And thanks to the Hilton Association for sponsoring this and put this together. As I said, it's always nice to have the warm welcome that the Hilton Neighborhood Association provides. I was a lucky man the day I stumbled across Maplewood. My children were lucky children to be born and raised here. My stepchildren are lucky to be living here and to be going through our great schools and enjoying our great parks and our great services. I'm proud of the part that I played over the years as a volunteer and as an elected official in helping to improve that the community and to improve the community services. I would say to you that the great thing about Maplewood is that Maplewood makes it easy to be involved. Anybody can simply show up, join a neighborhood association, volunteer to help clean up the parks, volunteer to help out with the PTA, volunteer to get on a township board. We have a long list of people who have volunteered to serve our community. And it is those people that make up the fabric of the civic life of this community. It is those people that make this community great. I've been thrilled to be a part of that for the last 30 years that I've been in town, not just as an elected official, but as a volunteer and as a board member in various local organizations. I love it. I'm seeking re-election because I love it, and I'd like to be able to keep doing it. I'd like to be able to keep providing the quality services that this community has come to expect and deserves, and that I've been able to be a part of providing. I ask you to consider me for one of your votes in the primary on June 2nd. I hope that I will continue to have the opportunity to serve you. I look forward to the election, and I look forward to continuing to be a part of this community and to serve all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sure that if you have some individual questions, the candidates will be here. I think that they did an excellent job. Thank you so much. There are some